Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jayam Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Ashtotala Shat Shri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire Nashtapraisha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Sadasevya Sadasevya Srimad Bhagavati Kata Yasya Shavanamatrena Harishchittam Samashrayet. So, Hare Krishna. Good morning. Today we're reading the 18th chapter of the 10th canto, text 21 and 22. Chapter title is Lord Balaram Slays the Demon Pralamba. So text 22 is on the board. So I'll just read text 21 and then we can repeat text 22. Acherur vivida krida bhaya vihakalakshana yatra rohanti jetaro vahanti cha parajita. The boys played various games involving carriers and passengers. In these games, the winners would climb up on the backs of the losers who would have to carry them. Srila Sanatana Goswami quotes the following relevant verse from the Vishnu Purana. Harina kridanam nama balakridhanakam tata prakridata hite sarve dvodo yugapad utpatan. They then played the childhood game known as Harina Kridanam, in which each boy paired off with an opponent and all the boys simultaneously attacked their respective rivals. In text 22, we can repeat. Vahanto vayamanascha charayantascha godhanam bhandirakam namavatam jhagmu krishna puroghama vahanto vayamanascha charayantascha godhanam bhandirakam namavatam jhagmu krishna puroghama vahanto vayamanascha charayantascha godhanam bhandirakam namavatam jhagmu krishna puroghama. Please chant. And the word for word. Vahanta, carrying. Vayamanaha, being carried. Cha, and. Charayantaha, tending. Cha, also. Godhanam, the cows. Bandhirakam nama, named Bandhiraka. Vatam, to the banyan tree. Jhagmu, they went. Krishna Pura Ghamaha, led by Lord Krishna. Translation. Thus carrying and being carried by one another, and at the same time tending the cows, the boys followed Krishna to a banyan tree known as Bandhiraka. In the purport by the disciples of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Sanatana Goswami quotes the following verses from Sri Harivamsha in the Vishnu Parva 11:18-22, which describe the banyan tree. I'll just skip the Sanskrit because it's quite a lot. They saw that best of all trees, which had many long branches, with its dense covering of leaves. It resembled a cloud sitting on the earth. Indeed, its form was so large that it appeared like a mountain covering half the sky. Many birds with charming blue wings frequented that great tree, whose dense fruits and leaves made it seem like a cloud accompanied by a rainbow, or like a house decorated with creepers and flowers. It spread its broad roots downward and carried upon itself these sanctified clouds. That banyan tree was like the lordly master of all other trees in that vicinity, as it performed the all auspicious functions of warding off the rain and the heat of the sun. Such was the appearance of that Nyagroda tree known as Bandira, which seemed just like the peak of a great mountain. ॐ ज्ञानतिमिरन्दस्य घनञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं हे कृष्ण करुणा सिन्धु दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिकान्त राधाकान्त नमोऽस्तु ते तप्त कंचन गौरंगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये मुखं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपं तमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनतारणं नमः ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनीति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषशून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानं पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Chaitanya Padam Rajam Madhupevya Namo Namah Katanchita Shreyadesham Shrapitat Kanda Bhagavate. Hare Krishna. Good morning. Thank you all for coming here and attending the Bhagavatam class. Please forgive me for any inconsistencies or problems or anything that may be improper in my speech. I'm either your friend or your junior, so hopefully you'll be merciful to me. Bless me that something nice can come. I'll just reread the 2 verses. The boys played various games involving carriers and passengers. In these games, the winners would climb up on the backs of the losers who would have to carry them, thus carrying and being carried by one another, and at the same time tending the cows. The boys followed Krishna to a banyan tree known as Bandiraka. So just to give some context of where we are. In the previous chapter, the life of Kaliya was described, and we just finished with the Kaliya Lila, where Krishna chastised Kaliya. And then there was a forest fire, because the residents of Vrindavan, they were so exhausted, so emotionally drained, after thinking Krishna was going to be swallowed by the snake, and then seeing him triumph over the snake, and seeing that he was alive, they just decided, because they're simple village people, oh Krishna, let us just take rest here on the bank of the lake. We don't even need to go back to the village now. It's a long walk, so let's just take rest here. And so they woke up in the middle of the night, to a raging forest fire, because the summer season was coming, and in the summer season everything gets very dry. And Vrindavan is already quite a dry place, and so it's very prone to brush fires and such. And so they woke up in the middle of the night to a raging forest fire, and they called out to Krishna to save them. And he saved them from that fire. He brought them into that anxiety, and then, because he loves to do that, to put his devotees in anxiety so that he can rush in and rescue them, thereby increasing their love for him and increasing their reciprocations. So then after that, it's described that they all went back to the village, and for some time, Krishna did his day-to-day, which is ever increasingly more ecstatic. And he went out and tended the cows and played games with his friends. And so the majority of this chapter, or at least the first half of it, is given to descriptions of Krishna playing with his friends. So here we're hearing about some of the games that he plays with his friends. They play hide and seek. And they have two teams, so it's not one person seeking and everyone else hiding, but they have two teams. It's kind of like Manhunt. I used to play that when I was a kid. Usually played at night. You have everybody in the neighborhood gets together and you split everybody up into two teams, and some people have to hide, some people have to search out the other people. And so they would break into two teams, and then whoever was found on the team of the people who were supposed to be hiding would have to then carry the person who found him back to wherever they designated as their place. Very sweet. They played so many different games. Innumerable games Krishna plays with the cowherd boys every day. And so this chapter describes that, and it also describes the coming of the summer season. As we heard earlier, the forest fires of summer are quite prevalent in that particular place because it's a little more dry. So the summer season comes, but because Krishna is there, obviously the forest fire was there because it facilitates a pastime. But in general, even though, if any of you have ever been to India, in the summertime in India, it's like 120 degrees. It's unbelievable. You basically wake up, you chant your rounds, and then the sun comes up and you stay in your room in the AC, if you're lucky enough to have one, and just wait for the sun to go down so that you can come outside and do a couple things before you go to bed and wake up and do your sadhana. It's very intense. In Govardhan, it's broken records and hit 135, 137. People just die. They literally just, you're done. 135 degrees standing temperature. So it gets very, very hot. But this chapter describes that in Vrindavan, when Krishna was there, this wasn't so. Actually, the entire atmosphere of Vrindavan would manifest all of the best qualities of spring in the summertime. It's described that when summer rolls in, I don't know if any of you have been in the woods during the summer, but you notice there's a really, generally a very loud sound of crickets. This hissing. They're very, very loud and can be annoying. So it's described here in the Bhagavatam that sound was covered by the pleasing sound of all the waterfalls. Because the water wasn't dried up, the rivers weren't dried up. So the waterfalls were flowing off Govardhan Hill, and the pleasing sound of waterfalls would cover the sound of the crickets. And it's described that the banks of the rivers were so muddy, because the rivers were flowing with so much water and the waves were so nice, that actually none of the trees, none of the grass, none of the vegetation was able to be dried up by the summer sun. And the trees were so tall and so magnanimous and giving so much shade and cover and fruits and flowers that nobody at all felt the heat of the summer. The sun's rays could not penetrate in a negative way the atmosphere of Vrindavan. So this chapter describes that as well. And then it goes into this description of the play of the cowherd boys. And then we hear this wonderful description as Srila Sanatana Goswami quotes from the Harivamsha of the Mahabharata, in the Vishnu Parva of the Mahabharata. He quotes the grandiose nature of this tree, the wonderful, amazing nature of this Bhandiraka tree that they go to. And what is it? It was so big that it seemed to take up half of the sky. It looked like a mountain covering the sky. And there were so many birds and so many flowers that it looked like there was a rainbow running through it. Because it was so high that it was like it was touching the clouds. And the birds and the flowers, they looked like a rainbow coming out of the clouds. There were so many, and so colorful and so beautiful, so striking for the eyes. So, something that's brought up here, and one thing that we have to understand when we read these Vrindavan Leelas, is that in spiritual life, everything is always more and more ecstatic. There's no question of boredom or complacency or something being even normal. There's no such thing as a normal day in Vrindavan, really. For Krishna, for the cowherd boys, for Mother Yashoda, for the gopis. Every day, every moment actually, is the most ecstatic moment that they've ever been in. Which is pretty wild for our conception, because our understanding and our experience in this material world is that we experience something and it's nice, and then after that it's all downhill from there. We have to find something else in order to fill the gap of our expectations. We work towards something and then we get it. I'm sure all of us have had this experience. I've certainly had it. Thought that I really, really wanted something. I want something, gone after it, gotten it. And then it lasts for a certain amount of time, sometimes shorter, sometimes longer. But at the end of the day, I want something else. It's not enough. I become complacent. I become dissatisfied with whatever that thing was, even though at a certain point it felt like exactly what I knew I wanted. But spiritual life is not like this. Actually, spiritual life is the opposite, in that in the beginning, we don't even know what we want, or we have some hazy conception of what we want. But as we deepen our understanding, as we deepen our practice, things that start out as difficult and painful, even painful sometimes, they end up becoming very, very, very ecstatic, and they grow more and more and more. Hare Krishna Subal Guru and Mother Krishna Archana. Please bless me that I can speak something. And so these things, they become more and more ecstatic as we go on. We hear from Rupa Goswami in the Upadeshamrita. He says that in the beginning, chanting is, well, he compares it to having jaundice. He says the holy name tastes so bitter that it's like one who has jaundice, whose liver is afflicted by this terrible disease. I think I already explained this to you, Jack, that jaundice is a terrible liver disease that makes everything taste like the worst thing you've ever tasted. Makes all sweet things taste like the worst thing you've ever tasted. That sweet rice downstairs at lunchtime, you wouldn't even be able to take a drop of it because it would just be so horrid for you. So this is what it's described that spiritual practice is like in the beginning. And I can remember this from the beginning of my practice. I remember starting to chant one round, and I would look at the beads. It takes maximum 12 minutes, 14 minutes when you're first starting, because you're not fast, you don't know how to do it, but still, it's maybe a 10-minute process. And I remember chanting and just looking at the beads and just, oh God, it's taking so long. I'm only halfway, And then after a month, starting 2 rounds. I'll do 2 rounds now. And it being such an endeavor, just almost painful for the mind to have to do that and to not do this and jump around and do what it wanted to do. So in the beginning, we see that these things are difficult. But after we start to experience more, after we put some years in, and for those among us who have put many years in, we start to see that actually this is very nice. And then when we look back, we see that it's actually grown. In my experience has actually grown in its not to use the typical Hare Krishna word for nice, but its ecstatic nature, in its way of being. It's just gotten deeper and more sophisticated and more wonderful and more subtle, and more reciprocation comes. So spiritual life is the opposite, and this is what the Brajvasis experience on the highest level, is that every moment for them is better than the last moment. Every time they see Krishna, it's like they never saw Krishna before. Even while they're looking at Krishna, he's more beautiful than he was 1 second ago, 1 minute ago, 5 minutes ago. The way these things work. Actually, it's described that the gopis, during the rasa dance, when they looked at Krishna, they could not peel their eyes away from him, even for a moment. And that night was extended into 4,320,000,000 years length. All the nights in that day of Brahma came together to make one night. And it's described that the gopis, they didn't for a second look away from Krishna. And it was so ecstatic, and he's so beautiful, that actually, when that 432 billion year long night ended, they felt that it was just a moment. They felt that it was only a moment. Now, you try this one time. Find someone you like and try to stare at them. You see in the regular world, mundane lovers, they become very, in the early stages of their love, they become very infatuated with each other. And they may stare at each other for some time. Wow, she's so lucky, or he's so wonderful, I'm so lucky. But 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 1 hour, boss. It's not going to work. The gopis stared at Krishna, and Krishna stared at the gopis for 4 billion years. And then at the end of it, it felt like a moment because it was such an ecstatic experience. And they thought, oh, we didn't have enough time. What? That was only a second. How can you take that away? That's not enough. It's not fair. So every moment is more ecstatic, more ecstatic. So this Bandiraka tree that's described here, the grandiose nature of it, the beauty of it, that's described in the Mahabharata, as quoted by Srila Sanatana Goswami. This is just one of those things, because it's not only Krishna, the entirety of Vrindavan, every resident of Vrindavan, everything that happens there is unlimitedly more beautiful at every moment. Every time they experience it. Every time the cowherd boys go out into the woods. Every time Mother Yashoda wakes up, goes to wake up Krishna. Every time Krishna wakes up, every time he does anything, everyone is more beautiful than they've ever been before. This is the nature of spiritual life. Spiritual life is always increasing, always increasing, always increasing. What is that? In the first verse of the Shikshashtakam. In the first verse of the Shikshashtakam, Anandam Buddhivardhanam, Pratipadam Purnamritaswadanam. This taste at every step, Swadanam. This ocean is ever increasing, and at every step, it's better and better and better. Pratipadam, every step. It's just increasing. It's just going more and more and more. And we should take heart that actually this is not only for perfected souls that this happens. For one, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has told us in the very beginning, in the first verse of his Shikshashtakam, that this takes place. But also, we hear from the Bhagavatam that to the degree that we take shelter of Krishna, to that degree, we can experience these things also. The analogy that's given, bhakti is compared to hunger. So the verse, Bhakti paresh anubhavo vidaktir anyatra chaisha trika ekakalaha prapadyamanasya yatashnatasyus tushti pushti shud apayo nughasam. So devotion, bhakti, direct experience of the Supreme Lord, paresh anubhava, and detachment from other things, or virakti. These three occur simultaneously for one who has taken shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the same way that pleasure, or tushti, nourishment, or pushti, and relief from hunger, or shud apayo, come simultaneously and increasingly with each bite for a person engaged in eating. So this is quite interesting because it gives a very, very beautiful analogy in relation to the sadhaka. And actually the opportunity that's being offered to us by the acharyas and by Krishna in how we can engage in bhakti, and kind of a scientific way in which the results of that will come about. So just like when one eats, there's, pleasure, nourishment, and relief from hunger. If I'm really, really, really hungry, when I take one bite, it's very, very pleasurable. And that one bite, it gives me a little bit of nourishment also, because my body's telling me I'm hungry because it needs some nutrients in order to continue working. And then, as I eat more, if I eat more pleasure comes, more nourishment comes, and then, to the degree that I eat, relief from hunger comes, so that I'm no longer needing to eat more. I'm no longer desiring to have more and have more. So these three things, these three steps that happen in the process of eating, they're likened to the practice of bhakti. And Jiva Goswami explains that bhakti, or devotion, the actual practice, and the result of that practice is compared to satisfaction or tushti, the same thing that we get when we eat, because they both take the form of pleasure. Bhakti is inherently pleasurable. It's inherently an ecstatic activity. That's why everyone is sitting here in this temple, because everyone here has found something that's better than anything else out there. Any one of us could be running around chasing some other pleasure. Many of us were chasing wonderful pleasures before. Subal Prabhu was a quite good musician, I'm sure, and was on the road to be a rock star. But he found something higher. He found something better, right? That was more satisfying. You found a group of people that you just found more real, more deep. And it just captured your whole life. Because that's the pleasure of bhakti. It's there even in the beginning. Paresh Anubhava, or experience of the Supreme Lord, is compared to pushti, or nourishment. Because this is what sustains one in one's spiritual life. Just as the nourishment from food is what sustains one when they eat. The nourishment of this Paresha Anubhava, this experience of the Lord, is what nourishes one in one's spiritual life. Because all of us, to some degree or other, have some experience of Krishna. It may not be that Krishna jumps off the altar and speaks to us, but we have some experience of Krishna in our lives. Krishna has changed things. Krishna has done things in such a way that it has helped to purify us. It has given us wonderful experiences that encourage us in Krishna consciousness. He's put us in contact with his devotees who can instruct us to go deeper in the process. So experience of Krishna. We're chanting his holy name every day. We chant his holy name so many thousands of times. Any one of us has chanted his name thousands upon them, maybe 1,000,000 times by this point, maybe more than 1,000,000 times by this point. So we have some experience of Krishna. And this is actually, according to Jiva Goswami, what sustains the sadhaka. And then this virakti, or detachment, is compared to shuddha apaya, this relief from hunger. Because by getting these first two things, by practicing bhakti and feeling the pleasure that comes from there and being attracted by that, and then also by experiencing the Lord in the form of his name, in the deity form, in the ways he interacts with our lives, in hyper-personal ways, we can become detached from outside things. As Prabhupada says, that our process is not one of negation. Our process is to take things which are superior and put them in the place of the negative things. So by doing all of these wonderful things, then naturally detachment comes. Naturally detachment is born. And from that place of detachment, which comes from a higher taste, one can experience, in the words of Jiva Goswami, shanti, or peacefulness, which allows one to go further into the practice. Because when one is not disturbed, as Rupa Goswami has told us in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, that one should maintain the material body and one's material needs in such a way that it's just enough that he is no longer disturbed. Because this is very conducive for spiritual practice. This is very conducive for bhajan. Being too austere hardens the heart, and being too lax makes the mind unsteady. And so finding that perfect balance, it brings peacefulness. But we affect that perfect balance by very, very zealously hearing about Krishna and talking about Krishna and thinking about Krishna. That is our austerity, is bhajan. Bhajan is our austerity. Chanting, reading, talking about Krishna. So we do this, and this naturally helps with this detachment. And it naturally steadies the mind. Because we're focusing actually on the only satisfying object. Because Krishna is considered as the the Vishaya, the supreme object of love. We're focusing on the only satisfying object in all of existence, actually. And so by doing that, the mind becomes very steady and very happy with time. Just as Rupa Goswami says, this jaundice goes away. This taste that seems so bitter, it gives way to actually the most tasty thing. Just as if you have jaundice and you eat sugar, you eat more sugar, you take more. Eventually the sweetness comes back. And then it's, Jack can eat the sweet rice again. Now it's tasty again. Now it's like it was. But then that brings the question, because in this verse we hear that devotion, direct experience of the Supreme Lord, and detachment from other things, these three things occur simultaneously for one who has taken shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But what does it mean to take shelter of Krishna? Because many of us, and especially at different stages of our devotional life, and especially in the beginning stages, this question can be kind of murky. We come with our own conceptions, we come with our own desires, we come with our own feelings and thoughts as to what that means. We come with our jaded kind of biased conception of what we're going to get out of the process. We come with motivations, as Krishna explains to us in the Bhagavad Gita, by saying that sometimes the poor come, sometimes the distressed come, sometimes people come just because they're interested to know, and rarely people come because they already know, because they studied thoroughly. We can say in Kali Yuga, it's almost impossible to run into a real jnani, because a jnani implies that somebody already understands the Vedas, he already understands the purpose, he had a lower level of realization, and then, after discovering the actual true wealth of life, and thoroughly systematically knowing the process, he decided, yes, I will do this. So generally, these first three categories are where we fall, and generally the first two. And even more so, generally, because we don't even practice karma kanda in the West, which is what those who are looking for wealth, they worship Krishna because they see, yes, this is the Vedic way to have a nice life. Generally, we fall into the category of those who are distressed. Life is going really bad and we find an existential crisis and we think, I need relief from this. And because we're open, when a devotee comes to us with some knowledge, with something, we open our ears. And they're able to get through, they're able to punch through. So we come with our mixed motivations, we come with our own desires. But what does it actually mean to surrender to Krishna? Well, our acharyas have given quite systematic things, and because we're reading about Lord Balaram killing Pralambasura, it's very interesting and very important to know what it means to serve Krishna and what it means to serve Guru, because these two are actually inseparable, these two services. In one sense, they're one thing, but because we follow Achintya Bheda, they're also two things. So in the CC, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, we hear this verse, very famous verse Prabhupada quoted quite often. Brahmanda Brahmite Kona Bhagyavan Jeev Guru Krishna Prasade Paya Bhakti Lata Bij. That Krishna, first, Brahmanda Brahmite Kona Bhagyavan Jeev, that a jiva is wandering up and down, going through his karma, taking this birth, taking that birth, in the material world, in samsara, going around the circle. Doesn't know what's up, what's down, he's just moving at the whims of his mind and at the whims of the karma that he accrues. And then, Bhagyavan, he becomes fortunate when he runs into a devotee. Because Krishna, he gives Guru, and Guru gives Krishna. Prabhupada would explain this verse often like this. Guru Krishna Prasade Paya Bhakti Lata Bij. So first, Krishna gives the Guru who gives the Bhakti Lata Bij, and then through the process, through the growth of that Bhakti Lata, and through the instructions of the Guru, one attains Krishna. So it's very interesting because it's like Krishna, Guru, Krishna. Because at first we're calling out to a conception of God, we're wondering, please help me, please help me, please help me. We pray, we chant the Maha Mantra. We learn about different devotees. And then, when we become sincere enough, Krishna sends us an actual person, a representative, whom we can serve on his behalf. And then, by serving that person, that person gives us an understanding of a deeper relationship with Krishna, of how we can serve Krishna more intimately, of how we can go deeper into this process. So actually, one surrenders to Krishna in the stage of sadhana by surrendering to Guru. And who is that Adi Guru? Who is the Guru of all Gurus? That's Balaram. So Balaram, he slays Pralambasura, and this is I find this interesting because it relates directly to this principle of Shuddha Apaya, or the cessation of hunger, which comes from this practice of bhakti and the experience of the Supreme Lord in this verse from the 11th canto that I just quoted. Because Pralambasura, he represents, according to Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, lusty inclinations and the desire for wealth or personal gain and fame. So we pray also in the Shikshastakam every day, or whenever we say it, Na dhanam, na janam, na sundarim, kavitam va jagadishakamaye. My only desire, O Lord, is service to you. I'm not looking for dhanam, wealth, janam, followers, sundarim, or a beautiful, attractive lover, or this. I'm not looking for these things. What I want is to serve you as my Lord. So we pray to Krishna for these things, as we've been told to by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But actually, what we're told by Krishna Lila and by our acharyas who have a very, very special viewpoint, because they're actually in Krishna Lila, is that these particular things, the desire for wealth, lusty inclinations, and the desire for fame, dhanam, janam, and sundarim, these things, they're not actually conquered by our endeavor. The other demons that are there in Krishna Lila, they're mostly conquered by a sadhaka's desire to get through them and crying out to have them removed. But the particular demons that Balaram kills, according to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, they represent, particularly Dhenukasura and Pralambasura, they represent things that the Guru removes from a sadhaka's life. Obviously, we have to sincerely want them gone. But there's an extra emphasis given on the fact that Guru removes these things. And so this result of the cessation of hunger, it actually comes from one's service to one's Guru. Because Balaram, he kills Pralambasura single-handedly. He goes out, and as we will hear later, he gives him one good strike, and he finishes him. So lusty inclinations, the desire for fame, the desire for wealth, these things, they can only really be conquered by taking deep shelter of one's Guru. By finding Guru and by taking shelter of Guru, one can actually get over these things by his mercy. And it's interesting because, as Jiva Goswami says, this Shuddhapaya, this detachment from these other things, this allows for the peacefulness which will give one, which will then further allow one to actually undertake the practice of bhakti, which will allow one to chant the holy name with concentration, which will allow one to call out with, sincerity isn't the word I'm looking for, but focused intention. I'm sure we've all chanted, and here and there this morning for me was particularly difficult. I'm sure there are a lot of things going on with the project we're doing, and I just found myself every half a round over here and over there, and it was very tough. But this concentration can come from one being dedicated to the service of one's Guru, dedicated to the service of the acharyas, but specifically one's Guru, and these things can go away. Excuse me. And actually, just the other day, I heard a very nice story in relation to this. That Krishna, he's in Dwarka with Rukmini, and Rukmini is serving him his lunch. And all of a sudden, one devotee is going through some struggle with some anartha, some internal problem. And he says, "Oh Krishna, please help me with this problem. Oh Krishna." And Krishna hears this in Dwarka, because he hears his devotees. He's Bhakta-vatsal. He's in connection. He always hears. And Rukmini also hears. And Krishna says, "Serve me rice." And she gives him some rice. And then again, oh Krishna, my anarthas, please, please help me, please help me. Oh Krishna, serve some sabji, serve some sabji. And Rukmini says, will you go? Why don't you go to him? Why don't you go to him? He says, serve some sabji. And then finally, the devotee goes, oh Gurudev, oh Gurudev. And Krishna gets up and runs out of the room. And he runs to go help that devotee. And then when he comes back, Rukmini says, what happened? Why did you run when he said, oh Gurudev? And Krishna said, because when he called out to his Gurudev, he appealed to that mercy aspect of me that I cannot ignore, that I have to go help. Because actually, as we hear this Brahmanda Brahmite Konya Bhagavan Jeev, Guru Krishna Prasade Paya Bhakti Lata Bij, that this person, our Guru Maharaj, whoever that may be, he's been placed in our lives as Krishna's representative for us to serve. And Krishna backs him cent percent with everything. He is fully deputized to give the mercy and to help us and do whatever we need. And so when we call out to him, Krishna also is very inclined to help us. He's very inclined to help one in one's spiritual life. I also have had experiences like this where things have come up in my life, in chanting especially, because somehow when you chant Hare Krishna, all the worst things come out of your mind. Many devotees have told me this, and I've experienced it. So many, just, everything was good, and then I started chanting Hare Krishna, and then all this depraved stuff comes out. Where's that coming from? And you try to say, okay, I'll keep chanting the Maha Mantra, I'll keep chanting the Maha Mantra, and it doesn't go away. And it seems to get worse. But when you think about your Gurudev, when you chant his Pranam Mantra, when you meditate on service to him, then these things can go. Because Krishna has put the potency there. He said, this is the person I've given you in order to help you come to me. This is the bona fide process. So it's very important for us to understand Balaram's role as Adi Guru and how these things they come together. But then another question arises, because the Guru Tattva is very difficult to understand because it's so broad and it's so deep. So what does it mean that Balaram or Nityananda Prabhu is Adi Guru? Does that mean that Balaram is literally incarnated as the person who is my Guru? It's not actually a person, but it's Balaram who's taken the form of this person, or Nityananda Prabhu is my Guru? What does it mean that he's Adi Guru? And Prabhupada says many times that Nityananda Prabhu is the original Guru. He says this in so many places. What it means, actually, is that our Guru, he is a representation of Nityananda Prabhu, or Baladev. He's the representative. He acts on their behalf. As I said earlier, he acts on Krishna's behalf. Krishna also says this, Acharyam Mam Vijanayan, that I am, no, he says, O Uddhava, no, that I am the Acharya. But he says this in the same way that he says, I am the shark, and I am the tree, I am the banyan tree, and I am this, and I am that, of great things, of men in men I am the ability. He says that these things represent me in their excellence. So he says, I am the Acharya. In other words, the Acharya is my representative. And all the Acharyas, they've concurred with this. We sing every morning, Sakshad Harit Tvena Samasta Shastrai. Uktastata Bhavyata Eva Sadbi, that all of the great souls and all of the Shastras, they proclaim that the Acharya, that the Guru, that he embodies all the qualities of Krishna. That in one sense he is Krishna. But they say he is Krishna, Kintu Prabhur, Yapriya Evatasya, in the sense that he is very dear to Krishna. And so Krishna backs him. Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam. I worship the lotus feet of that person who is so dear to Krishna. Who is so dear to Krishna that he has nearly all of Krishna's qualities. All the Shastras say this. He has Krishna's nature. This Harittvena, Haritva, literally means the nature of Krishna. He has this magnanimity, all of these wonderful things. So the Shastra explains to us who the Acharya actually is and who our Guru actually is. Srila Prabhupada sums this up quite nicely. He says, in all the ancient literatures of devotional service, and in the more recent songs of Srila Narottam Das Thakur, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and other unalloyed Vaishnavas, the spiritual master is always considered to be either one of the confidential associates of Srimati Radharani or a manifested representation of Srila Nityananda Prabhu. But again, we have to deeply understand this. We have to deeply understand this tattva of who the Guru actually is as a representation and as somebody who is a via medium, as Prabhupada has said, that Krishna can work through because he's surrendered to him. Because he's fully surrendered, Krishna can work through him. And in that way, he may actually do things that he's not completely cognizant of on behalf of Balaram and on behalf of Nityananda Prabhu, in order to rectify us, in order to help us along with our spiritual lives. And this point is very interesting, but every sadhaka runs into this at some point or another, especially people who are close to their gurus and see that this person actually sometimes seems like he's human. We hear all of these things in the Shastra, that he's not different from Krishna, and so then a neophyte devotee will think, that means he won't make mistakes. That means he knows everything. He's omniscient. He's perfect in every way. Everything that he says is absolutely, unequivocally true. But when people serve their gurus in very intimate situations, even people who served Srila Prabhupada expressed that, wow, it was a little tough after I spent every day with him to keep this in mind at all times, because he's so personal and a person, and even sometimes they would observe mistakes. And it's hard to observe mistakes in somebody that you think is perfect, because your conception of what perfection isn't fully there. So it's very important. Actually, one devotee, because in Prabhupada's time, because Prabhupada is such a perfected soul, such a perfect soul. He's not even perfected, because that implies a time of not being perfect. He's just a perfect soul. He's a Nityasiddha, Parikar, Radha and Krishna. Some devotees, because of their rightful doubt, because we should always express our doubts, they would test Prabhupada a little bit. So one time, one devotee, they were walking in New York City. He was walking in New York City with Srila Prabhupada, and he looked up at a skyscraper, and he said, Prabhupada, does the Guru know everything? And Prabhupada said, yes. This is the Siddhanta. And then the devotee said, so how many panes of glass are in that skyscraper? Pretty audacious question. It's a real challenge. And Prabhupada said, how many drops of water are in a mirage? Which is a very deep answer, actually. Well, on the surface, it's like, why did you ask me a stupid question like that? But if we look at that answer, it's very deep. Because Prabhupada is also saying that the spiritual master doesn't have to know every little detail of everything. It's not the same type of omniscience that we think of when we think of God knowing everything. The spiritual master, he knows everything Krishna needs him to know and wants him to know at any particular point, because he's perfectly in touch with the spiritual energy. He's perfectly in touch with Krishna at all times. And so, anything he needs to know, he knows. But it's not that he performs magic tricks. It's just, oh, there are 7,942 panes of glass in that building. I'm your guru. It's more subtle. It's more deep. It's something more than this. And actually, the Shastras, the Puranas, specifically the Adi Purana, which is quoted in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, gives a really wonderful example of this to help us to understand this tattva. There's a famous verse in the Adi Purana that's spoken by Lord Shiva, Aham Vedmi Shuko Veti Vyasu Veti Navetiva. This is Lord Shiva speaking to Parvati. He says, Aham Vedmi, I know. Shuko Veti, Shukadev knows. Vyasu Veti Navetiva. Vyasadeva, he may know, Veti, Navetiva, or he may not know. And he's speaking in reference to the Bhagavatam. He's saying, I know the purport of the Bhagavatam, Shukadev knows the purport of the Bhagavatam, but Vyasadeva, he may know or he may not know. Now this is groundbreaking because Vyasadeva wrote the Srimad Bhagavatam. Generally, when we see a book, the writer knows it better than anybody else. Am I right? If somebody writes a book, it's pretty safe to say they're going to know more intricacies and intimate ins and outs of that book than anyone else. But here, Lord Shiva, who we hear from the Bhagavatam, is Vaishnavanam Yata Shambhu. He's the greatest devotee of Krishna, as proclaimed by the Bhagavatam. He's saying, I know the purport of the Bhagavatam. I know its intricacies. Shukadev knows its intricacies. But Vyasadeva, who wrote it, he may know or he may not. We can't be sure. But Vyasadeva wrote the book. So this is a very, very powerful way for us to understand how Guru Tattva works. Because Vyasadeva, he was a medium for the Bhagavatam to manifest, because the Bhagavatam is also eternal. And even though Vyasadeva, he is an incarnation of Krishna, he may not have had the knowledge of all the intricacies of the Tattva in the Bhagavatam, though it came through him. And his perfection was that that book was able to come through him. All the Puranas were able to come through him, were able to manifest through him. So in the same way, Gurudev is so dedicated and committed to Krishna that Krishna is able to act through him, that Baladev, that Nityananda Prabhu, they're able to act through him as the Guru. They're able to do things through him as a medium. So this can be difficult to grasp, but this is the Siddhanta and it must be known. Otherwise, we'll look at our gurus and we'll say, well, he messed up that verse. He made a mistake. He did this wrong. That's obviously not right. But absolute material perfection is not required in someone who has deep, deep spiritual depth. Because their quality is that they're very dear to Krishna, as we sing every morning. Their quality is that they are in Krishna's heart and Krishna is in their heart. As Vishnu says to Durvasa Muni in the 9th canto. He says, I am in their heart and they are in mine. He says, my devotees are so dear to me that actually I don't have any independence. I am aswatantra. I don't have any independence. I've given it away. They have it. I haven't even given it. They've taken it by their love. They have my independence. I go where they want me to go, so I can't help you. So this is very important to understand. And because we're in such an important chapter of the Bhagavatam, which thankfully Bhaktivinoda Thakur has churned for us and explained these things to us, because many of the previous acharyas, they don't explain this in the same way, or they're just quiet about it. So we're very fortunate that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has explained these different leelas, and this Pralamba Sura Leela and Dhenuka Sura Leela in this way, so we can understand how we can actually overcome these things. Lust, the desire for wealth, and the desire for fame. Because these are major, major linchpins holding us into the material world and stopping us from moving forward in our spiritual practice. So that's what I could come up with. I apologize if there are any faults. Please correct or whatever is necessary. If there are any comments or questions, please.
Thank you, Bhakta Josh Prabhu. Always give a very thoughtful, well-researched class, so it's very nice. The explanation of taking shelter of Sri Guru to be able to overcome those deep anarthas, and how that is the media, the process that Krishna has established. You highlighted that point with the pastimes of Krishna in Dwarka. We also hear in the previous pastimes of Kaliya praying to Krishna that only you can take away this condition that I have, that, and it's just recalling also Srila Prabhupada instructed disciples that, Prabhupada, why are you praying to the deities? Oh, I'm praying that they should protect me so I won't fall down. And the disciples said, well, you said that you never fall down, so this is why. So you're praying to Krishna for protection, you're praying to Krishna for purifying you and taking away those material conditions. So obviously you also explained that the spiritual master and Krishna, they're one. You can separate them. Prabhupada also explained that. So how we understand that principle? We come to the deities, we pray to the deities, so please, help me free myself from these deep anarthas, and we know that our spiritual master is very expert in helping us, move through the whole process of purification and bring out, or expose those things to our view, by instructions, by service, by arrangements. These things happens. But when we comes to pray, we naturally go to Krishna. So possibly like the devotee who were telling the story, Krishna, please free me, and Krishna, until he said, Gurudev. So how exactly it works, because naturally it seems that our spiritual master is leading us to take shelter of Krishna for freeing ourselves. So and naturally we're very grateful to have that guidance and that support. So in general, you understand it like that, but it seems the instruction or the way that you highlighted, which is, we read that, is as as you brought it out, in the Guru Ashtaka and this and that you pray to your spiritual master. So how does it work, that unifying and exactly? I mean, it was part of your class, but maybe on that point that we naturally come to Krishna to actually pray for alleviating ourselves from this.
Well, I think just like the whole tattva, Guru tattva, like you opened by saying, we know that in one sense Guru and Krishna are one, and we know they're also different. That it's something like that as well, that also, like you said, a Guru tells us to worship Krishna, and so that's why we do it, because actually our Gurudev's only interest is to have us connect with Krishna. That's why he's our Guru. He doesn't have any other interest. He wants to serve Krishna by connecting people with Krishna, and he has deep compassion, and so he wants to serve those people who, because of his elevation, he may even think are better than him, because he wants them to experience something of what he's experienced. He wants them to be able to serve Krishna. And so we do these things and we serve Krishna because that's what our Guru has told us to do for our sadhana. But I think what this story highlights is that in the real times, because we're not always in a real deep point of crisis. We're always in a crisis in the sense that we're in the material world. But particularly for my life, for your life, there are specific times where we're really struggling, and there are other times where things are going nicely, right? Like sometimes service is going well, and maybe, we've gotten some really good engagement and things are moving well and we're taking shelter of the holy name and taking shelter of Krishna and things are moving, my japa may be nice for a period, my service is going well, people are coming to the program, we're distributing a lot of prasadam, whatever it may be. But in the times of real crisis, when we're really, really struggling, I think what this story is highlighting is that in that point, one has to really take shelter of one's guru. And one has to really take shelter of that mercy aspect of Krishna, that place where Krishna has placed his mercy in order to actually become free from these things. That's what I gather from the story. Because at the same time, that's also how we take shelter of Krishna, is by taking shelter of his devotees. It's one of the main points of our Siddhanta that we're not so quick to run in and try to serve Krishna. Because naturally, devotees, they don't feel that I'm qualified to serve Krishna. They're much more likely to serve one of Krishna's servants. And we even see this with our guru. When we're with our guru, if we're trying to establish a relationship with someone we think is our guru, or even when if we're not so intimate with our guru yet, we approach his servant. And we say, hey, is there anything I can do? Is there anything I can do for Gurudev? Can I wash his clothes, or can I wash the plates after he eats, or can I sweep the floor? We're looking for any little thing, because we feel that, I'm a little timid to just run up and say, hey, I want to do this for you. So I think it's something like that we have to understand. It's a very intricate and delicate thing when we approach Krishna. And Krishna, because I don't want to go too deep into that particular point, but because he's invested his mercy in his devotees, they're the ones who feel the very, very deep compassion for the jivas in this world. And so, because Krishna is absorbed in Vrindavan, many people in this world, they call out Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. But because he knows they're not calling out with unmotivated love, he's not so apt to be moved by that. His devotees are in this world because they're moved by compassion to help people, even if they don't want to be helped. But I think it's very important, this point about approaching the servant of the servant. As Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has told us, is Gopi Bhartur Padakamalayur Dasa Dasanudasa. That I'm the servant of the servant of the servant of the servant of the gopis. I actually, in my research this morning, I found one place where Prabhupada was very heavily stating this. He was saying, we don't say we're Krishna. We don't even say we want to serve Krishna. We say we want to serve Krishna's servants. And that's the proper conception. And we hear in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Raghunath Das Goswami was chastised because he went to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and he said, can you give me some instruction? I really want some personal instruction. You're Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave him a slap and said, I gave you to Swarup Damodar. You're his property. He said, why aren't you asking him these things? You should be asking him. And then he gave him some small instruction because it's Raghunath Das Goswami and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It's, there's one side that's an instruction for us and another side which is very intimate lila. But the instruction for us is that you have your Gurudev. Why aren't you going to him? Why aren't you bringing these things to him? And I think we see this as a difficulty because we have a big movement and because sometimes we don't have proper conceptions and people aren't able to find the proper conception in the environment that they're in. That we have people who they've taken initiation, they're doing the process, but they don't really understand that they have to go to their guru for things, and therefore they suffer a bit in their spiritual lives. I know people who've told me that they don't know how to go about that, and you see they're trying to take shelter of the deities, they're trying to do this, but it doesn't seem like they're getting answers. But they're also not willing, maybe they feel embarrassed, they feel some difficulty, they feel distanced, they don't feel they have a close relationship with their guru, and then they don't go to him. And so I think it's very important. I think this story highlights that when we're really struggling, we always take shelter of Krishna, but when we're really struggling, we have to go to our guru. This is my problem. You please help me with this. I can't get over it any other way. That's my thought. I hope that's a good answer. Anybody else? It's already 8:50. Maybe we should end. Yeah, we'll end here. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Shri Shri Kishore Kishori ki jai. Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani ki jai. Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki jai. Shri Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki jai. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Vaishnav Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.